Hello. In this video, we are going to look at alternatives to using the set-driven key method for wiring up constraints in an FK-IK setup. In this case, we have a leg. Here is the thigh chain. This would be the joint chain that's actually bound to the geometry. Here we've got an IK chain and an FK chain, and these chains are both used for controlling this geometry in either IK or FK mode. We can see that they're color-coded. They're each in their own layers. In order to get this layout, I came over here to the layout area and right-clicked. I chose 3 panes split right, which gave me this particular layout. And then under panels, I chose the node editor, perspective view, and the outliner. I can also bring up the outliner by clicking on that, but I want a lot of space to work in the node editor. If we add elements in the node editor, we click on plus. To erase them, we can click on minus. Now if I click on plus again on the selected object, I can also come in and click or hit P, which will pin the item. So then if I come and use this button, which is clear, this is going to remain here in my graph. So that's the function you want to use. If you recall, we were using this button here, but P is the actual hotkey for it. In class, we had actually made a toggle switch for this using Mel. So I'll select it again, click off P, clear. One more time, I'll do that. Add. And these buttons here show various display options for certain attributes that we will be connecting together. You can make bookmarks, you can edit bookmarks, and you can go back and forth between previous bookmarks so that you don't lose a good snapshot of your connections. This button will expand the window, and what we're going to be using are utility nodes. So we'll click on utility, and some of the utility nodes that we will be using in this particular video will be remap value, reverse, also the blend colors. Previously we used the multiply divide node, and in another video we're also going to use the distance between node. And we will also be using the condition node. With condition nodes, distance between, we'll be able to calculate the scale if we're doing a stretchy rig, which will be in a future video. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to hide this window. I'm going to delete these nodes because I don't need them right now. I'm going to clear my space. Now if I select the thigh and click on the plus icon, with the shift key, we'll expand the entire hierarchy, and you can see that each joint has constraints set up. And so for instance, the thigh has an orient constraint to the IK thigh and also to the FK thigh. Each of these have a value of 1, and so the weight is identical. They're both pulling on the joint, and so that's essentially zeroed out the influence. What I've done here is rotated the the IK at 30 degrees, and then the FK at negative 30 degrees. So that's just zeroing out the bind joint and it's leaving it here at the starting point. Okay, so previously we used the set-driven keys to keyframe the weights on the constraints themselves as far as which one of these joints the bind joint was going to be following. All right, so I'm going to grab all of my constraints. I'm going to click on Add, and that adds them here to the graph. What I'll do now is sort of line them up visually. Okay, and then I'm going to select them and expand them with this button, or I can press the 2 key. I'm seeing the output of the IKFK weights, but not the endpoint, so I'm going to have to go to the next level with the 3 key or that button, and so now I can see the inputs for the FK and IK. Okay, so I have a control layer here, and this is the control that I'm going to use to drive these joints, and we're going to look at a couple of ways to do it. First off, what we're going to do is go to let's go to the attribute editor. That's this button here. And I'm going to go to attributes, and I'm going to add an attribute to the selected item. So this is going to be IK to FK. Let's say float, and we'll click on add. Now if I come over to the channel box, select the element, we can see that we've got the attribute here, but it's not doing anything. And actually what we'll do also is come back to the attribute editor, attributes, edit attributes, click on IK to FK, and I'm going to give it a minimum and a maximum value. So has minimum 0, has maximum, we'll put it at 10. Now 10 is an attribute that's frequently used just because if you middle mouse drag this virtual slider here, it's just a nice comfortable distance, 0 to 10. So it's commonly used. Also 0 to 1 is commonly used. There's no reason that you can't put this at 0 to 1 and just get floating point numbers in between. You just won't have as far as a travel here. Okay, so we know that this is going to be driving these, so let's add this to the graph. Add. Now we don't need the shape node, we just need the transform node. So now would be a good time to select everything that we want to remain in the graph. Let's hit P and pin it. Now I can clear, and that's going to get rid of the shape node that I don't need. Okay, and let's expand this node here. So here I've got my IKFK dial, and I need to hit the 3 key to find that attribute. Now we're going to be connecting these attributes up. It's important to know that also under general editors, there's the connection editor. You do the exact same thing in the connection editor. This just makes it a little more visual, and you can just see things a little better. You can use a connection editor for all of these things. The only thing to keep in mind is when this is set as from to to, say if we grab this and said reload left, so that's my IKFK dial, and if I were going to add another element, I could say reload right, and then that would be this toe orient constraint, and we could come through and find our connections, and we could connect them that way. So there's nothing stopping you from doing this. If you prefer to do this, it's completely fine. I just like the idea of the node editor because I can create nodes and I can visualize them and I can make bookmarks for them, so I can go back to all of that. Okay, so we are going to be controlling the IK to FK. So what I'm going to do here is, let's just take the IK to FK. I think I'll move this down so we can see everything a little more clearly. So I'll take the IK to FK, and I'm going to map this into the FK of each one of my joints. All right. And so now if I come over and if I click on the IK to FK, you'll see that the let's click on this again here. Click on IK to FK, and if we move this at 0, we are on IK. And that's correct here because let's look at one of these nodes over here in the channel box. So the yellow means that we've got an incoming connection on FK, all right? That incoming connection is set to 0. So right now these are favoring the IK. Now if I came back and set this value to 1, actually let's set it to up closer to 0. If we set it all the way to 0, then it's going to be affecting the IK. But we don't have anything plugged in for 0 yet. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add so we have two problems here. First off, the IK to FK is mapped at 0 to 10. Our weights are looking for a 0 to 1 value. So what we're going to do, hit tab, and we're going to get the remap value node, and let's expand this. Okay, and so it's important that you want to rename your nodes. So I will call this remap value. Actually, no. I'm going to call this (10 to 1). Not sure if that's going to work. Let's just call it remap scale, or actually remap constraints. And I'll put an RV at the end, and that way if I do a search for it, I can bring it up later. Okay, so the way this works, I have input max, input minimum, and input value, and output X, max, and output minimum. Okay, so we can see these values here, but we're going to get a better understanding of what's happening in this node if we go to the attribute editor, or select that button, or Control A. So we've got remap value. Let's click on this one and we can look at the ranges. So our input minimum will be 0 and our input max will be 10 because that's the value that the IKFK node has. We want our output min and our output max to be 1. So this node is just going to remap 0 to 10 to 0 to 1. So we'll take this and put this under input value. And now what I can do is break the connections here. I can just click and drag. Or I can select and hit delete. So I've got the input value coming in, and now I'm going to have an out value. So now let's go to the out value, and we'll put that on FK. FK weight, constraint weight. Okay, so these are all plugged in to the appropriate nodes. All right, so let's give this a shot now. Come back to the IKFK. All right, so now what we're getting is a value from 0 to 10. On the controller, and let's look and see what's happening on one of the constraints. Okay, so as we go from 0 to 10, let's come back here a little bit. As we go from 0 to 10, this translates to 0 to 1, and at 0 we're favoring the FK. If we get up to 1, do that really quick. And if we get up to 1, what's going on is both of these values are set at 1. And so we would want this value set at 0. Okay, so how do we get that 0 value? So what we're going to do for that is hit the tab and we're going to add a reverse node. Okay, and so let's expand that. And for my reverse node, I'm going to want to rename it. So I'm going to call this constraints RV or RN for reverse node. Actually, I'll just call it R for reverse. Okay, so I've got each one of these axes, and I've also got just this input. So I'm going to take the out value, and what I need to do is just connect this to one of the values. And then for the output, I'll take the same value. In this case, we're going to use X. X isn't the actual axis of rotation or anything we're worried about, it's just a slot. And now for the out, we're going to come over here and we'll plug that into the thigh, knee, ankle, all these are going to the IK values. Okay. So now if we go to our switch we can middle mouse drag, and we are now making this value go from 0 to 1 on the switch. But if we look at one of our constraints, we can see that the value is being mapped from 0 to 1. Okay? So, in my opinion, a much better alternative to set-driven key. For one, it's easier to set up, and another, I think it's a little less animator-proof. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.